There is such a thing as getting too comfortable or staying in your lane too much in managing your portfolio as a business. I think taking a look at new asset classes is imperative to bring different things into your portfolio. For myself, when I saw everybody in 2018, 2019 chasing multifamily and the yield starting to decrease.
The residential starts were up by 2%, but the multifamily home starts were up over 14%.
I knew there had to be another answer. This is what allowed me to start taking a look at this asset class, understanding how it worked, and realizing this is exactly where the cash flow is, and that's where I need to be. Hello and welcome to Tech Equity and Money Talk. I'm your host, Christopher Nelson. And this week we're going to be talking about mobile home parks. Mobile home parks, also known as manufactured housing communities. You may be asking yourself, okay, Tech Equity and Money Talk, why are we talking about mobile home parks? The reality is mobile home parks are an incredible cash flowing asset that can provide cash flow and income into your portfolio on a steady basis. This is something that I discovered and put into my portfolio. So I want to walk everybody through this asset class today. We've been going through this series of understanding what are different income producing assets that you want to consider for your portfolio. So I want to do this as a use case of, myself, why I put this in my portfolio. So in late 2018, 2019, cash flow in a lot of the new investments in multifamily started to shrink from 10% to 6-7%. 2019, a lot of the investments had 4% cash on cash. That is a very challenging amount to be able to generate income to replace your paycheck. It will definitely reduce your paycheck. So I was searching for new asset classes. I started to explore mobile home parks. I had heard that they provided a lot of cash flow. I want to walk you through what were some of the questions I was asking myself, what were some of the things that I was thinking about, so that you can understand what this process looks like. I also want to expose you to this asset class. There are some different operators that are doing some things today. My partners and I, we own almost 1,000 units of mobile homes in North Carolina and also in Southern Mississippi. It's performing very well for ourselves and our investors. And so, think of this as a educational opportunity to understand more about this asset class and to understand, as I was and I am the CEO of my portfolio, how was I looking at this asset class? What were some of the questions that I was asking to think about bringing it in my portfolio? And I want to walk you through what that looks like. So the three big questions that I was asking myself was, our mobile home investments, can they truly produce cash flow that I'm looking for, which is 10% or above? Can they reliably produce that cash flow, and why? What is the reasoning behind that? Number two is, I had heard many times that mobile home parks were recession resistant, meaning when the economy goes down, the market goes down, they continue to perform well. I wanted to understand why that they operated that way as well. And then I wanted to understand what were the different ways to operate mobile home parks, like what does mobile home parks operations look like themselves, and what do some of the structured investments look like? So let's walk through that. First, as I was trying to get to the cash flow, I needed to understand, I've heard mobile home parks, I heard manufactured housing community. What is this? What do all these terms mean? I think it's so important when you start looking at an asset class that you start diving down into what are the terms, what are the fundamentals of that investment. So I'd heard mobile homes. What I came to discover is that anything before 1974 that was manufactured with the intent, and so thinking about this third housing type of mobile homes, manufactured homes, what that really means is that the home is manufactured offsite. It is brought to a lot. The lot has been zoned and has been prepared with sewer, electricity, water, cable to put the home on top and have it set. So pre-1974, these homes were called mobile homes because they were able to be moved around, and you can pick them up and move them from one place to the other. Statistically, they only go to one location. That is the first place that they're set. Post 1974, the requirements changed, and so they rebranded and called them manufactured homes. Today, they're very energy efficient. There is a lot of exceptional models out there that you can buy manufactured homes that are $200,000, $300,000, very nice homes that are put into lots. They have a lot of fire safety. They're very well constructed. So that is what they are. And I teased out a few things here. You have the home. The home can be either owned by the tenant or it can be owned by the property. And then you have the lot, which is essentially where you have to rent the lot. And so that is what mobile home parks are. I came to understand that there's two main strategies of how park owners run their parks. There are park-owned homes, a park-owned home strategy, meaning that the park owns all the homes and rents out everything. So think of it as a same thing as an apartment building. You rent out the home, and then that rent is technically in the books. It's going to be structured as home rent and lot rent, because the lot rent is how the bank values the property. So it's important to separate those out. Now, the park owners, when they own the homes, what does that mean? It means they're also responsible for all the maintenance on the homes. It also means that you bring in renters. Renters are different than owners. If you own your own home, you're going to treat it differently than if you rent from somebody else. It's just the truth. And then there's tenant-owned homes. This means that all of the tenants own their homes and they're just renting the land. Those are two models that fall under there. The tenant-owned home model is truly a land play. It's very lean, it is very efficient. And that was the one that I became drawn to, is looking at how do I invest into mobile home parks and end up with parks that are full of tenant-owned homes where the tenants really love their homes, love the community, and want to stay there. And they're partnered with the owners to pay the lot rent, to provide all the landscaping, to provide the services, to provide even amenities that would then enrich the value of the park. That became clear to me. The reason being is that the expense line and the way you manage that is much more efficient. So now that I got clear on what I wanted, I still wanted to understand what is the market? What are some of the advantages of mobile home parks? Well, thinking of it as this third asset class, around, single family homes that you can own your home, you can rent, multifamily apartments where you can rent an apartment, and then these manufactured homes. The interesting thing is manufactured homes are very affordable, meaning that they compare usually on average, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home will be the same as a Class B 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. So you can get more value for the dollar spent. You can get more bedrooms, you can get more space, and it's your own unit. And especially in nice parks, you have some green space and different areas. And it's a really nice experience. And so for families that are on this cusp, who you have two working parents that are making $30,000 to $40,000 a year, or a single working parent who's making that much, a mobile home or a manufactured home can create a much nicer living environment for them. So it's affordable because you'll find that lot rent is usually somewhere between 350 and 550 depending on the area. Sometimes, West Coast can be much higher. Also with manufactured housing communities, there's relatively low turnover. Once people get in and get established, there's low turnover because they know and they trust their community. They are, generally speaking, on an income that's not going to grow dramatically over time. And so it's a very sticky thing. We'll find that in a lot of our communities, you can have renters that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years. So that's a good thing when there's not a lot of turnover like there are in apartment buildings. Also, low operating expenses. When operating on this tenant-owned home model, the operating expenses are around 35% of income, which compared to multifamily, which it usually operates around 50 or 55%, is a lot less. The important thing to understand too is that the way that it's zoned is that owners of multifamily and they get depreciation off of the building, which that's the important depreciation, whereas manufactured housing communities get depreciation off of the infrastructure. And the way that that's depreciated, you can actually take all of that depreciation in 15 years compared to multifamily, it's 25, meaning that while you don't have all the structure of a multifamily and all the upkeep of it, you actually get really good depreciation off of manufactured housing communities as well. All of this creates this very powerful picture when you think of it's affordable. It's sticky. You have people who are going to be staying there for a long time. You have lower operating expenses, good depreciation. All of this creates this picture for great cash flow. And it's true because you'll find that if you go and you look at historical average of the net operating income of manufactured housing communities over time, it is one that has never taken a dip. And so this combination of affordability, this partnership with the residents where they stay there, and the low expenses creates very consistent cash flow. And when you pay at the right price, that in and of itself can create an environment where you're getting 10 to 15% cash on cash return. So upon realizing this and understanding how the asset really operated, I knew that I wanted to go further. And that answered my question in looking at the numbers and looking at different profit and loss statements of different mobile home park communities, doing some underwriting myself. I then saw, okay, these things really cash flow. Now the question was, are they really recession resistant? How do they stack up against other assets? Well, I already mentioned that the NOI growth over time, and there's a chart that I have that says from 2000 to 2020, even while multifamily and others took a dip because rents would go down, mobile home parks just went up. And so I saw that data, which told me during 2008 that it performed very well. I wanted to understand why for myself. So when I started looking at it, what I realized is that there was a supply and demand issue in a good sense. So demand for affordable housing is continuing to grow year over year because as more new families are being created, there is not affordable housing being created for them. A lot of the starts that you'll see in multifamily are going to be Class B, Class A. There's not a lot of brand new Class C buildings out there. And what I also came to realize is that the supply constraint on new mobile home parks was real. That they're not making many new mobile home parks. In fact, they tend to plow more under than they do make them. Part of that is because of the stigma. There's a lot of stigma around mobile home parks because people don't want a mobile home park in their backyard. There are reputations, that mobile home parks have, especially some of the, 1-star and 2-star parks as being very dangerous places that people don't want them in their backyard. And so regardless of what municipalities are saying, they're getting rid of this very affordable third housing option and bringing in more expensive housing options. So what does this mean from supply and demand? It means that the demand is getting higher. The supply, and right now with the starts and stops, it's just staying equal. Right now, it's not growing, it's not shrinking, it's staying equal. That creates scarcity. Scarcity, when you own the asset in demand, is a good thing. And it was understanding that this asset class is becoming scarce that motivated me to start looking at what were different ways to invest in this asset because of that. This limited supply is a key factor to why you see this net operating income going up over time, because what happens is, especially during a recession, is people then want to lower their housing costs. Renters want to lower their housing costs. So if you're in a Class A building, which is the nicest apartment building around, you're going to then look to move to a Class B. Let me remove some amenities. Maybe I'm still in the same location, but I'm taking my rent down a few $100s. And that continues to go down from Class A to B, B to C. C could go to D, or they look at mobile home parks. And so when the economy goes down, people continue to look for more affordable options. When you're holding this asset class that's incredibly scarce, then you understand that prices are going to hold, at least, if not grow a little bit. And the good news is that to truly generate an income and to increase value in a mobile home park, you don't need to increase the lot rents by a lot every year. You can do that, responsible mobile home park owners can do that in a way where they're adding value to the investors. They're ensuring that they're keeping up with inflation, and they're not gouging the tenants. And so this is one of the things that proved out during the pandemic, right, is that these mobile home parks continued to increase in value. Collections were on point. Even in the heart of the pandemic, the average collections was around 90%. Because people wanted to stay in their home, they were also getting the additional funding from the government. And from a ownership perspective, there's hardly ever a default in mobile home parks because of the way it works. And so this then validated that second point that I was looking to understand is, are mobile home parks recession resistant? And the answer was yes, because of these specific dynamics. So then I wanted to understand, what are the two ways to get this into my portfolio? So there was the option to go out and buy smaller mobile home parks and own those individually. My wife and I looked at that as an option. And one of the challenges that we found to that is looking for smaller parks that were something that we could afford and then manage. There were a lot of out-of-state opportunities. And one of the things that became clear in talking to different operators is that operating a mom and pop mobile home park from out of state, even if it's just 11 or 12 lots, can prove challenging. There are times you can get the right tenants in there and manage it very well. But most of the advice I got was don't try and do that yourself. You want to have something at scale that can have a larger operations team that you can leverage to run the park. And so that made our decision right there, as we made the decision not to go operate parks ourselves. What we looked at was going to invest. And ultimately, I found a business partner, and we made the decision to go and, create an investment for other people to invest in, where I aggregated the capital, and he and the vertically integrated property management team runs the parks. And so I think with that point, for you have the decision. You can go look out in there. I do know some people I know are running some small, very efficient mobile home parks, and it works out well for them. I know some other people who haven't. I think the question that you want to ask yourself is where do you want the risk in your portfolio, and where do you want to spend your time and effort? What I know from operating mobile home parks, I want to share with you now is, what are some of the things that you want to look for in mobile home park investments? So I, now being in the mobile home park space and looking at other investors who have investments in the space, here are some things that you need to consider when you are investing as a limited partner and you are vetting your operating partners. Number one, how much experience have they had in the space? How many years have they been in operating mobile home parks and they understand how it works? Mobile home parks is a nuanced asset class. It is niche for a reason. And so people need to understand that. So I have two different partners. I have one who is our experienced partner, who was in the business for 10 years before we were, has a much larger portfolio, and has a lot of this healthy scar tissue. That was imperative as we started operating this. We wanted to make sure that we had somebody on the team who had been there, done that experience. And that's so critical. The other thing is, what is going to be the strategy? When you take over the parks, what is going to be the strategy? Let's say you have an experienced operator, then you want to ask, are you going to do a park-owned home or a tenant-owned home strategy? And some people are very successful with the park-owned home strategy. At that point, you want to just examine the underwriting and understand how they're underwriting for the expense of owning the home, because that can be a very large expense line, and you want to understand how they're going to manage that. I also think it's important with whoever you're going to be partnering with in these types of investments to understand what type of collections team they have stood up. The reality is, in when you're dealing with affordable housing or low-income housing, there is going to be a collections component to ensure that people are paying in a timely manner. And so asking and understanding how they operate that is a key question that you want to ask. In addition to the experience, you also want to understand who are going to be the people on site and what their roles are going to be. This is definitely a hands-on business too, because more than anything, for mobile home parks to work well, you want to ensure that everybody is complying with the rules of the park, everybody is complying with the law, and that is going to keep your park safe, and that's going to continue to attract, great hardworking people who want affordable places to live. That's critical. The other thing that I think is really important is understanding what their business plan and operating plan is going to be. Generally speaking, when you take over a park, it will be in a certain condition. And in a business plan, you will understand what investments they want to make. Are they going to repave roads? Are they going to add amenities? But getting clear on that investment plan and how they're going to execute that is key, so that you as an investor, you want to track that as you go. Now, all of these things, when you're analyzing an investment, I am so focused on how the investment, how the operations are going to work first. And then I go and look at how does that tie out with the results and the returns that I'm going to get. That's backwards to the way many people do that. Many people look at the returns and they, okay, this is what I'm going to get. And then they ask a few questions to validate what's on the paper. You want to reverse that. You want to have a clear criteria of how you're going to vet the operator, how you're going to understand their experience, the business plan. What are they going to go tenant-owned home, park-owned home model? And, how they're operating collections, who's going to be on site doing what are the roles and responsibilities of the team. I'm a huge fan of asking tech guys, so what systems are they operating? What does their reporting look like? What does it take to onboard a new park? I mean, these are some things that you can think of as a technology employee when somebody is onboarding a new client, into a new software infrastructure and training people. Like some of these same questions you're asking to these operators. Then you're going to pivot to the finances and say, how does this operating model tie with this? Okay, so you have this size of team. Here's who's in the parks. Here's who's making the collections calls. You can start tying that off to line items. You can start looking at what are the expense line items that tie to what they're saying. All of these are going to give you a feel with the quality of the operator and what they bring to the table. Because ultimately, when you make a limited partner investment into a mobile home park fund or into a mobile home park syndication, you need to understand the underlying investment, and you need to understand why they're making assumptions around rent growth, around the expenses that they're declaring, and how those map up to how they're operating today. I would definitely say I would not go and invest with somebody who did not have, some level of experience in doing this. It was their first or second time out, because there's going to be quite a bit of risk there. That's just a personal preference. And this is also where I am not choosing to spend additional time and effort, is helping somebody stand up their mobile home park business. Could be because I have one of my own that I'm in the middle of managing as well. So let me just wrap this up. Exploring and understanding new asset classes is critical to finding assets that you can place in your portfolio that will support you, whether the economy is going good or bad, creating a financial fortress. Looking at new asset classes that you're hearing about and exploring is important. You want to find out people who've invested in that asset class. You want to understand who are the experts in that asset class and get exposed to it. I can say that mobile home parks do cash flow heavily when you're purchasing for the right price. They are recession resistant. And you can invest. You can buy your own, or you can invest as an LP investor. There's many options out there. In today's environment, there still are a lot of mom and pop operators, meaning people who've owned these for 20 or 30 years, who are looking to exit and get out of these. I would say understand where you want to spend your time and effort if you want to go do this yourself, versus understanding who you want to invest with. For ourselves, investing in mobile home parks has turned out very well, and it is a core part of our income, is what we get from our mobile home park investments. And I will continue to invest in this asset class as the years go by. So I really hope this helped. And if you have any questions, I want you to hit me up at ask@techequityandmoneytalk.com. Please ask me any questions. We're here for you so that you can continue your journey as well. And we'll see you on the next episode.